Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the fantastic opportunity to be here today. It's really an incredible privilege. I want to acknowledge the producers firstly, the incredible work you're doing and the deep respect and for what you are accomplishing under very difficult conditions, especially after the recent floods that we've experienced. Chair, thank you very much. I see the clock has started. I'm thinking of faking an injury like a rugby player in that last 10 minutes. And would you stop the clock when I do that, or tie my shoes, or please? Guys, I've got quite a long presentation that's going to take me more than 20 minutes. I'm going to try and push it into the 20 minutes. Just to say, from the department side, we've got a program, Sustainable Resource Use and Management, that's got 4 sub-programs in that. I will be focusing on the land care sub-program and the typical work that's being done in that program in our landscapes out there. So land care is a national initiative based in the different provinces. It's about restoring sustainability to land and water management, integrated sustainable natural resource management. Primary causes of natural resource decline is recognized and addressed. There's a website. I'm sure they're going to share this presentation afterwards. I've got quite a few links that you can follow. It comes from the origin of the Conservation of Agricultural Resources Act, die ou grondbewaringswet, landboutegniese dienste, and it's the Agricultural Act that protects our producers and supports our agricultural producers to look after our soil, our water sources, our vegetation. Just to get some terminology out of the way, I'm talking about ecological infrastructure. When we talk about civil infrastructure, we're thinking of things like pipelines and weirs and pump stations and sumps. Much of the things that washed away during the past floods, gabions and river protection works and dams, that's how our natural resources are looking at in our rural landscape. When talking about ecological infrastructure, I'm talking about that same landscape, but that provides critical services like healthy mountain catchments, wetlands, rivers, buffer zones that protects us against floods, pollinators, healthy soils, biodiversity corridors, and the protection of our agricultural areas along those river systems and wetlands, fulfilling those functions. When I talk about investment, there's basically 2 types of investment you're looking at. The one is the hardcore financial investment. You're investing in something that will gain a capital gain for you over time, that will yield returns, protecting you from floods, disasters, fires, etc. So that there's a long-term provision of ecological services. However, I will be focusing more, although financial investment is critical, and we do invest millions every year in agriculture to support our farmers, I will be focusing more on our non-financial investments. I'm talking about time, relationships, skills, and labor into our natural regulating assets, the time that we're spending talking about this, and how do we get from theory, strategy, to the practice on the ground. How would that work? It's incredible. I haven't had any contact with the previous presenters, but I will also be referring and making the link between the climate change response strategy of Hoardgrow and what the department does. In that Hoardgrow strategy, there's reference to many trends and shocks in the different production regions, of which water quantity, hail, wind speed has been identified at the time as one of the most prominent ones. But there's many other risks that's also there for producers that they have to look at and consider when farming in our rural landscape. And you can read through many of those that's there. Many of these are not something that a farmer as an individual landowner will be able to address on his own. He needs support, he needs partnerships. There's many factors playing a role in how we will address these challenges. And many of them are real. The most of you sitting here today, it seems like, are producers and would easily recognize some of these challenges on your own farm and property where you're coming from. But how do you start addressing these challenges? And as I said, I'm going to try to link it with the strategy of Hoardgrow, and specifically Objective 1.5 are talking about restoring and maintaining on-farm ecological infrastructure. It's also referring to the contribution to catchment and landscape area-wide planning coordination forums, looking at the bigger scale than just your farm unit. So the Landcare area-wide planning concept is well documented in the Western Cape Government's guideline document for area-wide planning. It's based on the United States Department of Agriculture's planning procedure document for conservation services in the USA. It talks about the theory and the principles behind Landcare area-wide planning. How do you do it? What does it involve? So now for the next slide, I want to ask you, especially if you're a producer, to think of yourself sitting in the Koa Bokkeveld or remote areas, far away from the metro, far away from a town, and you're producing fruit in that area, but you've got real challenges, the ones that I've identified earlier in the previous slides. So how does area-wide planning affect you, the way that we're looking collectively at addressing the problem? It's a comprehensive problem-solving process. It integrates the social, economical, and ecological concerns. It's looking at the bigger picture. Stop looking at the farm boundary. Look up, look at the catchment, look at your neighbor, the downstream, the upstream guy that's got an influence on your river system. The process strives to sustain and improve the environmental health through a natural resource management approach, but super important, especially in Landcare, our culture, what we do, it must be driven by local initiatives. It's not a top-down approach. Assess the natural resource concerns, determine what conditions they desire, and formulate alternatives. Again, driven by the local initiatives. It's encouraging a farmer to look beyond the fence row. I mentioned this, to look at problems and opportunities at a scale larger than your individual farm. All right? This sounds very theoretic. How do we go about doing it? This slide is quite busy, but I've involved a few pretty pictures of what's happening out there, the practical stuff, connecting the strategy to being practical on the ground. It involves many farmer information days that we have. And if I say we, it's not only the Western Cape Department of Agriculture, it's involving many other partners, Hordgrow amongst others, WWF, Cape Nature, Department of Environmental Affairs, BOKMA. They're always part of these information days in some way or another, many other specialists in those areas of what we will discuss on the day. The photograph at the top right is just after the earlier floods in 23-24 below the Berg River Dam. We had a specific farmer day because of the need identified by those landowners to talk about the river system, the health of the river, and why did it happen, what happened during those 23-24 floods. And then the one at the bottom is in Slanghoek, between vineyards, but we also do this between the orchards, and looking at soil health, having specialists there on the day, soil scientists, guys with mechanical background, looking at the implements and all that. Because we do take soil samples, soil health samples, to support farmers to have a baseline study of your soil to measure and come back in 3-4 years and measure again to see the changes based on the adjustments that was made. We also have bus tours, and all of this is basically to gather information from the farmers, to listen and hear the needs and the risks and what they want to achieve. The bus tours is incredible. We hire a 60-seater bus, we get it full of farmers, and not officials, farmers, and we get it with specialists on the bus with a roaming mic, and the farmer has the opportunity for that day to visit different sites, projects that we are driving, alien clearing, restoration, river protection works, and talk about what is happening there, but also talk to the engineer, talk to the geohydrologist, the wetland specialist that is on that bus. I really would like to encourage you to attend these tours when the invitations do come up. Environmental education is happening. It's all about knowledge exchange. So it's training to farm laborers about ecological infrastructure. Why is it important? What's happening in the river or in the wetland? And even to their children at the rural schools in the landscapes to do a junior land care program with those schools. Those children are busy with a mini SAS, looking at the quality of the river and the water in the river in the Slanghoek area. Training, the photograph at the top is Koa Bokkeveld farmers receiving some training on a water management tool that was developed for their use. I'll get a little bit into that later. But then also at the bottom, some of you are on that photograph, is doing a mini SAS with the farmers. That's just as you get out of Mitchell's Pass down below the Witbrug. area that got terrible damage now with the floods. And learning how to do a mini SAS in your river system, you can do it on your own, on your farm. You don't need specialists to see what is the health and the invertebrate health in those rivers. Technical support, surveying, LiDAR drone surveying of river systems, supportive with engineering designs for doing river protection structures, but then also monitoring and research that's constantly happening. There's photographs of individual specialists in that photograph, but also officials from the Department of Environmental Affairs, delineating wetlands, looking at the health conditions of those wetlands, and water quality in that area, and releases of water, also your environmental releases that's happening to your river system to maintain the health of that ecosystem. A lot of information is being covered by this, and once you've gone through these processes, you know exactly what's the need in certain areas. Now, just a few practical examples of that I can show to you that's happening, success stories all over the province, pockets of success that could easily be replicated elsewhere. One of them is a landscape network, the Upper Breda Collaborative Extension Group, the UPCHEC, is one of many, where various different departments, municipalities, BOCMA, Cape Nature, Environmental Affairs officials, but also water users associations get together at least 2 or 3 times a year to talk about anything that's got to do in the rural landscape about the environment, from land use, water quality, quantity, soil, youth, environmental education. It's a place where we get together to overlap our budgets and see where we can dovetail with each other in terms of initiative and do information days that's relevant to the farming, the producer community. There's also the fantastic Cape Farm Mapper planning tool. The picture that you're looking at is of the Rooiberg Conservancy between Robertson and Worcester, where we supported a group of farmers that wanted to develop new areas, virgin land in their landscape, and they were convinced to rather do it as a collective, as a group of farmers, so that a more improved area-wide plan decision could be taken. The end result, where there was constantly a no for new development, because of the green corridor that you're seeing, the end result is 5 farmers received approval for 475 hectares to develop in virgin land as a collective, well, individually, but collectively driven. And in exchange for that, almost 5,000 hectares, the remaining areas of the corridor, was written up in stewardship agreements with those 5 farmers. What an incredible success story. That 475 hectares of agriculture is millions of rands of private investment by our local farmers, not people from overseas or anybody, Robertson farmers. And that's the type of support, as if we work together collectively, looking at a bigger scale than just the farm. All right, then there's also the water resource planning. We're super excited about the opportunities of river maintenance and management plans that's made provision. Many of you would have heard about it. We've almost got 2,000 kilometers of rivers over the past 8 to 10 years that receive these plans. The department supports those farming communities or those catchments with writing up these plans. Specialists gives input. They write up a plan. It gives a vision to farmers. How do they want to see their rivers in 20 or 30 years from now? The opportunity that such a plan provides to a farmer, the day after a flood, he's able to notify his Water Users Association before notification and says, I need to repair my pump house, pipelines, my roads, I need to move in tomorrow. And he can do it. He's got the approval. There's no lengthy EIA, costly process that takes months to complete. Once you have this plan as a community that you supported as a collective, then you're able to do that. Obviously, there's also a water use licensing and GA process, but we are getting incredible support from BOCMA to support farmers with having those general authorizations in place. And they're much more lenient when you have such a area-wide maintenance management plan in place already for your farm. Then there's the past floods in 23-24. There's just a summary, a little bit of what happened and the participations, the respondents that did respond on that QR code. I'll be sharing the QR code again later for those farmers that's in the audience that hasn't been to your farm after the floods. Scan the QR code, complete your damages. I will give some feedback on what the status was 2 days ago. But anyway, having that disaster risk reduction QR code scanned and having that data coming in provides us opportunities to identify critical river systems that requires intervention, where only having biodiversity and corridors is not good enough. We need engineering intervention. So LiDAR surveys would be done with cross sections, and it gives us the opportunity through HEXRA's software modeling to look at the speed and flows and identify the areas of most risk. Like this is the 24 rivers that you're looking at, and you can see speeds of more than 6 meters per second. It starts moving rocks the size of this table in front of me. And so that's where the trouble is lying. And with the recent floods, it's exactly the point where it climbed out and devastated damage to a lot of agriculture downstream from that. Lastly, monitoring is incredibly important. There's some good activities that's happening by the department, rainfall stations, borehole monitoring, irrigation demands, environmental releases. You can read the reference of WWF's report on the drought that we had in 2015 to 2018. But it's all about, as a collective, not an individual landowner, but as a collective, look at your catchment with your neighbors and say, we want to gain data and information on what the natural resources can provide to us. Where's our risks? Using that data into the water balancing tool that informs the farmer then on how operational decisions can be made of water use at a catchment scale. It's critically important to take that ownership of your water and not only leave it for a government department or other external parties to maintain and manage. The tool provides that opportunity. I'm not going to stand still and go over this. I've made it as part of the slides because I'm sure they will present the presentation with you afterwards. But there's so many links with Hoardcrow's response strategy to all these different activities that I've mentioned, and the type of investment that we require to make into these landscapes that we have. So invasive alien clearing, rehabilitation, river protection works, etc. I want to get to the last one that's linked to Objective 3.4, improve access to finance and proactive transitions. We will have to start looking at a blended finance model where it's not only government-reliant funding, it's too erratic, it's too reliant on financial years. So now there's a flood, but it's too early in the financial year or too late in the financial year, there's no budget available, or it's not enough, and we only maybe get 20% of what we're asking from national disaster. So it's important that we're looking at a blended type finance where we start involving banks, the insurance companies, and also the whole concept that was mentioned earlier, payment for ecosystem services. If it's true that there's biodiversity credits and carbon credits and water credits, then why are we not seeing that happening on the ground where payment of those services are paid out to the farmer so that he can manage his ecological services? It's a tough one to crack, but it's definitely the future, and we should be looking at that type of support to our farming communities. The last slide I want to show, and I don't have to tie any shoelaces. I see I've got 1.5 minutes left. This was the status of the report at 5 o'clock on Monday afternoon. The QR code you can scan. It gives you the option, and this went out 2 days before that Monday when the rain started falling. So from the department side, we shared this with all our water users, our different agricultural sectors, and asked farmers to complete. So you get a little map. All that information is collated into one. Currently, the disasters are looking at figures of billions. It's not millions. And this is reported by individual farm owners. It still has to be verified, and we have to basically have interaction with the respondents and see what is reality and what is fake information that came in. But that's basically as it stands at the moment, and I see the figures. I think we've passed the 400 mark yesterday when I looked at the slide at the end. Why is it important to invest in ecological infrastructure? Agriculture cannot afford to have 1.6 in the 23-24 floods, verified damage, 1.6 billion rands worth of damage along our river systems and our catchments. We cannot afford it. This most recent flood event I would want to say is double the damage that we had in the past, at the least. And we cannot afford it. So rather be proactive and let's invest in our environment and in our catchments to prevent these type of disasters on our farms. Thank you very much, Chair.